There's a mission in the U.S. Navy's own Antarctic records that almost nobody outside a research library has ever heard of. It ran for less than 4 months in the winter of 1947 and 1948, and conspiracy channels avoid it completely. Not because it's boring, because it's the opposite. This one explains too much. Its name was Operation Windmill, and it quietly answers the biggest open question left by the more famous mission that came right before it. A secret doesn't survive contact with an answer like this one. That's exactly why almost nobody brings it up. Let me tell you what it actually was, because most people listening have never heard the name, and that itself is the point. A few months earlier, the Navy had sent the largest force it had ever pointed at Antarctica and brought it home early, unfinished. That mission got the documentary, the legend, decades of speculation. This one got almost nothing. The follow-up to the most talked about Antarctic operation in history is a near total blank in the public mind. So here's the blank, filled in. Operation Windmill ran from late 1947 into early 1948. Far smaller, no battle group, and it was sent for one very specific reason. Its name was Operation Windmill. Let me tell you what it was first, because most people listening have never heard of it, and that itself is the point. Highjump is famous. It has a legend, a documentary, decades of speculation. Windmill has almost nothing. The follow-up to the most talked about Antarctic mission in history is a near total blank in the public mind. So here's the blank, filled in. Operation Windmill ran from late 1947 into early 1948. Far smaller than Highjump. No battle group this time. The flagship was an icebreaker, the USS Burton Island, the same vessel that had arrived too late to do much during the first mission. A modest task force, a quiet departure, none of the fanfare. And officially, it too was framed in the dull language of science and training. Exploration, survey work, helicopter reconnaissance, convoy exercises. Here's the specific reason, and it's the whole story. The first mission had shot nearly 70,000 aerial photographs of the coastline, and without ground survey points, almost none of them could be trusted for an accurate map. An aerial photograph without a known point on the ground beneath it is just a beautiful picture. It can't be trusted to build an accurate chart, and an inaccurate chart is worse than no chart at all for a ship or a pilot relying on it. So Windmill's actual job was to land small survey teams at chosen points along the coast and fix their exact position using stars and radio, turning 70,000 pretty pictures into a chart the Navy could actually rely on. The kind of description designed to make your attention slide right off it. But underneath the dull words is the answer to Highjump's biggest open question. And once you hear it, the early retreat stops being sinister and starts making complete sense. Cast your mind back to what Highjump was supposedly for. Mapping. Photographing the continent from the air. And they did exactly that. They came home with something like 70,000 aerial photographs of Antarctica, an enormous haul. The largest set of images of the continent ever taken. There was just one problem, and it's a problem so unglamorous that no legend could ever be built on it. The photographs were nearly useless. Here's why. You can photograph thousands of miles of ice from an aircraft, but a photograph on its own doesn't tell you where anything actually is. To turn aerial images into a real map, you need fixed points on the ground, precisely surveyed locations, exact latitude and longitude that you can match against the pictures. Without those ground control points, you don't have a map. You have a beautiful, gigantic pile of photographs of white nothing, and no way to know precisely what you're looking at or where it sits. Highjump took the pictures, but the weather drove them out before they could plant the markers on the ground to make sense of them. That is what Operation Windmill was for. Windmill went back to do the boring, essential half that Highjump never finished. Its crews established ground control stations along the Antarctic coast, setting up astronomical observation points, fixing precise positions, so that the 70,000 photographs could finally be converted into accurate maps. They called it ground truthing, the unglamorous work of confirming on foot what the cameras had seen from the air. So the mystery the first mission left behind, why did a force that size come home with the job half done, answers itself. The job was always going to be in two parts. Take the pictures then verify them on the ground. The weather simply split those two halves across two missions instead of one. Highjump was the camera. Windmill was the survey crew sent to make the camera's work mean something. And when you understand that, the hole they fled from something story collapses. They didn't flee. They ran out of summer. And they came back at the next opportunity to finish exactly what they'd started. Not to confront a hidden enemy, but to plant survey markers in the snow. That is the truth. And I want to be honest with you, the way I promised at the start of all this. The truth here is mundane. There is no secret in Operation Windmill. It is, on its face, one of the most ordinary missions imaginable. Men going back to finish their paperwork at the bottom of the world. But here's why I made you sit through it anyway. Because this is the test. A real conspiracy leaves loose ends that stay loose. The legend of Highjump depends on one specific loose end. The unexplained early retreat, staying unexplained forever. The moment you learn about Windmill, that thread is tied off completely. The retreat had a cause. The unfinished work got finished. There's no hole left for the saucers to hide in. And notice what the storytellers did with Windmill. They didn't disprove it. They couldn't. It's documented. They just didn't mention it. They left it out. Because a mystery survives on what you don't know. And Windmill is a piece of what you don't know, quietly removed from the story so the mystery can keep breathing. That's worth sitting with for a second. Sometimes the most important fact isn't the one being shouted. It's the one being left out. So where does that leave us 2 missions in? Highjump, a war-sized force sent to map and train, driven home early by the weather, its work half done. Windmill, the quiet return that finished the job. Put them together and you don't have a cover-up. You have a perfectly coherent 2-part operation, stretched across 2 summers by the simple fact that Antarctica only lets you work a few months a year. The mystery, honestly, is solved. The facts close the case. And yet, there's still one thing the facts can't quite reach. The numbers explain the missions. The weather explains the retreat. Windmill explains the unfinished work. All of it accounted for. All of it except the man. Because Richard Byrd came home from that first expedition and started saying things. Strange things. Warnings. And then, over the years that followed, he seemed to walk those words back and then walk them forward again, contradicting himself about what he'd seen and what it meant, until the most credible polar explorer alive had left behind a trail of statements that don't quite line up with each other, or with the tidy weather and survey markers story I've just told you. The missions make sense, the man doesn't, and to understand why, you have to stop looking at the ships and the photographs and start looking at what one human being wrote in his own private pages.